The Lord be with you. I'd like to introduce Judy Horton, who is our first workshop leader this morning. If everybody gets settled.
There we go. Thank you so much. Can you hear me? Is this live?
You just have to hold it closer.
Oh, you sure? Oh. Unaccustomed as I am to public speaking. I don't know about microphones very much. Well, my sisters, you don't know how much I have missed you. My dearest friends from a little church in Taylor, Texas. Down Home Ranch would not exist without them. There are a lot of people that Down Home Ranch would not exist if it were not for them. But the real principals were the people of St. James Episcopal Church, which I think we had, like 60 seatings. It was a tiny little beautiful church if you ever go through Taylor. And we got the whole congregation out to clear weeds down after we bought the ranch. And they all came home with poison ivy. But they didn't give up on us. So my theme is gratitude, and I have so much to be grateful for. When I was born in Odessa, Texas, my brother was 4, and I don't know what happened, but I was put into the care of my grandmother as a baby. My parents had problems. My father was an alcoholic from the age of 14, and they had already, by the time we came along, I think, well developed the alcoholic family syndrome. And so not too long after that, my dad went into the Navy. And one of the funny stories of our family is that my mom was at a movie theater, and you remember how they used to have the news things? Well, during the war, they had that, and she saw my dad standing on a ship in the South Pacific. And so she ran up to the projection thing and told him, I saw my husband there. Can you somehow get me a clip or something? So they looked at it, and the man said, well, ma'am, you understand he was standing mast or something like that. And she says, what's that mean? It means he was in trouble. But she got her clip, so anyway, they didn't last too long. His alcoholism became worse and worse, and so at one point, so we were in Abilene, and at one point, my mother's brothers, who were all righteous, upstanding Baptists, just descended on our house in the middle of the night when Dad was out, scooped us up, and sent us to Amarillo to be with an aunt, so we would be safe. This tells me that we were in real danger. We were up there for 6 months and came home to our little house, and it was a total wreck. And he was gone. And I don't know what happened in those 6 months. I don't know if they corresponded. I know that we would, the whole family would sort of put us in the back of the house when a new person came into the cul-de-sac. So I know that there was real fear. And anyway, so we had just gotten back, and Mom was out doing something, shopping or something, and he came by the house. And my brother and I were playing on the porch, and he had 2 Hershey bars, and that's the first time we'd seen him in 6 months. And my brother wouldn't take his Hershey bar. But I never, ever gave up a Hershey bar. So there we were. And that's the last time we saw our dad. Not too long after that, he was working for an oil field supply company, and they had hydrochloric acid, and he drank hydrochloric acid to die. And it took him several hours, and I cannot imagine what that was like. And I don't want to imagine it. And he was a brilliant, handsome man, and it was just such a waste. And so, long story short, my brother went to live with my grandmother. My mother was very non-functional. And after a while, I did too. And one of the saving graces of my young life was that my grandmother sent me to Camp Arrowhead out in Hunt, Texas for 5 wonderful weeks. No, you didn't! Yes! Oh, I'm so excited. Yes, we have to talk. Because it saved my life. I mean, I'm really sure that it did. It was just 5 weeks of peace and fun and riding horses and swimming in the Guadalupe. Oh, it was just incredible. And so my brother had gone to live with her, and not too long after that, I went to live with her too. She moved to Abilene after my grandpa died, and she had a nice house in a suburb. So I moved in there, and now my grandma had already raised 2 children, born in the teens and 20s, a niece and a nephew, born in 20s and 30s, and now she had us, and she was pretty tired, but she was an amazing woman. And so, went to high school, did stuff, got a boyfriend, an Aggie that my husband brought home, or my brother brought home, and I'm still processing the whole syndrome of being a child of an alcoholic, because it really does. I don't want to say warp, but I think it is warp. I was absolutely unable to say no, So when my husband was graduating from A&M, he had a degree in physics, and he was close to the end, and so he had an offer to go to New Hampshire on fellowship to get his master's degree. And so he wanted to get married, and I said, I'm 17, Bernie would never allow that. Bernie was my grandma. And alas, Bernie said, okay. I think she was really tired of raising generations of children. And so we got married in this, lovely, beautiful, but the saving grace was that Bernie began to take me to the Episcopal Church. And I don't know if you're ever in Abilene, go see the one they were just built. You know it? Heavenly Rest. People always say it sounds like a funeral home. But it was so beautiful, and we had the most marvelous choir director, and my brother had the most marvelous, it was a tenor voice that could have gone Pavarotti, but he smoked it and drank it away. And it's a great loss to the world. But in that little church, I don't know, it settled me, it was beautiful. We sang in the choir. I was able to sing in the choir. Had the most wonderful little pastor. His name was Father Gerhardt. And just, he wrote me at Camp Arrowhead. That's the kind of relationship this church had. So we went for the last semester to my husband to finish up his degree in physics at College Station. And I started high school down there, which was a horrible situation. And thankfully discovered I was pregnant within, I think, the month of marriage. And of course, nobody believed it because my baby was 9 pounds, 7 ounces when she was born. And I took her back to Texas, and they said, yeah, all right, I know about you. But it doesn't matter. So anyway, we, we had a nice life for several years. We had another baby 4 years later. We adopted a little baby when she was 5 months old. So we had 3 lovely girls and a physicist with a wonderful job. By this time we're in Boulder, Colorado, and he was working for the, what is it? Anyway, some big thing that hires physicists. And, so life was good, I thought. But the whole thing with psychedelics and drugs and stuff was getting going. And he just jumped in. And he just, he became an addict to marijuana and peyote. And I never did anything, but just, the whole bizarre thing of the 60s was with us. And then one day he just said, and then he started sleeping around, and then he said, oh, I don't want to be married anymore, and off he went, So there I was. And since I can't say no, I met a handsome man at a Rolling Stones concert he took me to. He was so excited. But I have a confession to make here. I slept through most of it. And we were so close. I mean, Mick Jagger was, just like as far away as you are. And I said, well, that's nice. so anyway, that wasn't exactly why our marriage broke up. But anyway, so I married Jerry in a field in Boulder, Colorado, under the blue skies, the mountains. And he had taken a fellowship to go down and teach in El Salvador. So we load up our 3 children, our dogs, in a little Volvo, and we drive to El Salvador with some, with a trailer on there. We get all settled in a nice suburban house. We go down to look at the university. It's got machine gun pox in the sociology building. We thought, and you couldn't get the kind of information back then that you can now. I mean, we had something that said there had been some trouble from the State Department, but they didn't say anything about machine gun pox. So we were kind of dubious. Long story short, the university never reopened. It was, there were always rumors that it was going to reopen, but it never did. So put my kids on the plane. We hit the road with the dogs in our Volvo and came back to Boulder. Well, we'd spent pretty much all the money that we had because he never got paid while he was down there. So there we were, and we were sort of flat broke. And we just kept keeping on. And so I got a fellowship in Latin American Studies at the university, so he came to Austin. And in my second year of studies, I discover at age 41 that I am pregnant. And my husband was overjoyed because he had no natural children. And it was a very exciting time. Pregnancy went great, nothing was the matter. They tried to get me to take amnio, and I said I couldn't do it. I couldn't do anything about it, And she was born. That's usually my shtick. I'm very forgetful. And so I go into labor, and we go to the hospital, and my mom's there, and my daughters are there. And it was very short. I mean, I had babies like rockets, My first was 4 hours, and she was 9.7, yeah. So Kelly was born, and I saw the doctor and the nurse. It was like a cartoon. When I think about it, it was like, because you could tell right away she had Down syndrome. She was 8 pounds 7. She was good size. They whisked her off to the NICU, and doctor came back and said, they're pretty sure that she has Down syndrome. Well, my daughter Martha and I had visited like 6 pediatricians trying to find the place for our baby, And we had settled on this wonderful woman in East Austin, and she had a little clinic, and she was a pediatrician, and she was just the most wonderful person. And she said, well, did you have the amnio? And whenever I would talk to other doctors, and they would like, you know. And she said, oh, I wouldn't either, you know. And so Dr. Garcia comes swooping in with Kelly in her arms, and she says, you're going to have a wonderful time with this kid. She says, I know all about it. I interned, you know, with the Down syndrome group in San Antonio, and so, you know, but it was pretty bleak. I won't deny it. It was pretty sad. But she was the most adorable baby. She was just fat and happy and cute, and she developed very fast, you know, very close to normal. And so, yeah, things went quite well for a while. And as we got older, as she got older, we began to see, you know, what lives people with disabilities were living, and we didn't like it. So we decided, don't even ask me how, I know how, you know, it was mostly Jerry's vision, and you know, I'm the girl that can't say no, so we wound up buying this. First of all, we sent something out to all of our friends and relatives and stuff and said, looky here, we're thinking about doing this thing, you know, we hope that you can support us. And so my cousin, the first donation that we got for the ranch was $20 from my cousin in Wyoming. And Jerry took a picture. He wanted me to take a picture, and he's standing by the mailbox with this thing, our first donation. So all this time, I mean, you know, we don't have any church affiliation. He was a proselytizing atheist, and I was a lapsed Episcopalian. And but I had started going to Quaker meeting, and it was very restorative. But I'd been there several years, did all kinds of things with the Quakers and stuff, and it was very nice. But and there's a real arc to the silence. It's pretty much an hour, could be a little bit less, a little bit more, according to the Spirit, although they didn't really believe in the Spirit. They were all mostly academics and things like that. But I had this dream one night, and the dream was so frightening. And it was that I was in the back of a church. It was an Episcopal church. And I hadn't been in a church for years and years. And I start making my way down the aisle. And I remember that I'm supposed to kneel and have communion, so I kneel. And I put my hands over the rail of the communion and I wait. And I see the priest coming close to me, but I don't really look over to see what's going on. And then he plopped in my hands flesh and blood. And the blood is dripping. And I just went, I'm out of here, you know. And I aborted that dream. I stopped it, and it haunted me. But I couldn't let it go, you know. And so I was in Quaker meeting. I think it was just the next morning after that dream. And I was in the silence, and it had an arc to it. You know, at first everybody's settling, and then the silence gets kind of profound, and then people start standing up and speaking if the Spirit moves them. So I'm in that early 15 minutes of going into the meditation, and all of a sudden I started experiencing the dream again. I was awake, but the dream was just the same. And something was telling me, you're gonna stay here. You're gonna see this through, you know. And so I went through the rest of the dream, and I actually tasted the flesh. And you couldn't have gotten me out of that trance with anything. So I just began going. I went to Episcopal churches. I went all over Austin. I did all kinds of things. I just couldn't figure out what to do. And so Jerry, my husband, was, when my mom died in there, and it was just a very, very difficult time. And then one day when my mom died, and I was real depressed. I was just really depressed, and I was laying on the bed one Sunday morning. I'd stopped going to Quaker meeting, and Jerry comes in and he says, "Let's go to that little Episcopal church over up on the highway." And they had given us space to have our Down syndrome parent meetings and stuff like that, St. George's. And so we went to St. George's, and there's one more thing I got to tell you about. So it was Thanksgiving. Kelly was about 3.5. And it was a cold, wintry day, and but the house was warm, full of smells and things. But I said, I'm just going to take her to the park for a little while. And it was kind of cold and windy. And nobody's there, but I'm swinging her on the swing. And I see this man come in on a bicycle when he had a little guy behind him. And he comes right up to me on the bicycle, and he said, "Hi, I'm Carol. Anybody know Carol Foltz?" Yeah, right. And he said, what was his little boy's name? It was Peter. Yeah, right. Little guy that they were fostering. And he just took to Kelly right away. He loved babies, and and we talked, and he said, "Well, if you ever want to come to church, come to my church. It's a great church." And I don't know how much longer it was. I mean, Kelly's like 18 months or something before we went to church. And that was after my mom died. And just Jerry, out of the blue, the proselytizing atheist, comes in and said, "Let's go to that little church." So we went to the little church, and there was Carol Foltz. And he says, "Welcome." And there we were. And it was it's some of the most wonderful years. And Kelly would just, she'd just be passed in the congregation all over the place, during. Very cheerful. Everybody loved her, and it was just super. And so things just developed, and, against all odds, and nobody gave us a chance at building the ranch. Practically nobody. Everybody said no, but they didn't know my husband. And so he and Carol were going to go out and look for land, and I said, "Don't come back and say, 'I found the land.' Just don't do that." That night he comes home and he says, "We found it! We found it!" And it was the most beautiful piece of property. And we went out there when Kelly was almost 4. No, she was almost 6, that's right. And she went to school in Thrall, Texas, which, believe it or not, always has the best ratings of any school system in Texas, go figure. And she did very well. She was mainstreamed up until 5th grade, and at that point things got too abstract and she had to go into special ed. But they had a super program. And so we did Special Olympics and stuff, and wrote desperate letters to possible funders, and somehow it just started happening. And so, we got to know Little St. James very, very well, and get them all scratched up with poison ivy. Some of them had it for like a month. It was but they didn't give up on us. So we just started to do things. We didn't have anything. We had this little old barn, and Janet and Helen and their husbands would come out and trim trees, take trees down. I mean, it was just incredible, the support that we had from the community. And we were laughing over yam bakes. We we had a friend who had a little girl with Down syndrome, and children with Down syndrome are very prone to leukemia, and their baby had leukemia. And so he was the stay-at-home dad, and she kept on working. And one day a week, they would get somebody to come in so he could just come out and do something else and not take care of his sick baby. And so John had planted 2 acres of sweet potato. They all came up. And it was harvest time, and Jerry was looking at the field and said, "What are we going to do with all those sweet potatoes?" So we decided to have an event called the Yam Bank. And we had fiddlers, and the Baptists lent us their huge tent, and people came, and we just had a fabulous time. And the Knights of Columbus and Elgin donated, we had a big cooker that somebody had made for us. Who was that? Oh, I don't know. But anyway, this enormous cooker, and the Knights of Columbus would come out at 4 in the morning and start doing the briskets, and we just did it year after year after year. And so I went, it just evolved into the gala. They forgot about the yams. And so, so we retired in 2016, and then, just lived life as retirees for a while, and went to Europe and had a good time, came back. And then Jerry had started a consulting company with a friend, and so they were flying around the country, teaching other parent groups or other groups how to really get started and, sort of avoid some of the hitches that we'd had in the early days. And I don't know, it was very, very hard to leave the ranch, and people were really ready for a change in Jerry's governance, which was entrepreneurial, but not necessarily directory. It was kind of chaotic and stuff, and so tensions got high, and we left the ranch, and we went to a little condo in Austin. And then I came down with cancer, right, in 2013, yeah. And so that year was spent in surgery and stuff. And anyway, we made it through, and I was pronounced cured. And we just lived life and had a good time for quite a while. And then the shutdown came, and Jerry couldn't do anything anymore with his little consulting business. And he got very, very depressed, and I got very, very depressed. And so things were not well between us at all. He was drinking a tremendous amount, and I was just, I don't know, I was a typical alcoholic's wife, and there's a real syndrome there. But our oldest daughter lived in Kansas and had a farm up there, so I would always take Kelly up there to visit, and then we came back. But I needed a break just to be away, so I turned around, made another ticket, and he said, "Well, why are you going up there? You just got back." And I said, "That was with Kelly. I'm going up for me." So things were tense. And so that was on a Saturday. I called him on a Tuesday. And he was very cold and was kind of upsetting. But Carolyn, she was an insane gardener, and there's this flower garden that was like two times the size of this, and I'm in the hammock, and the bees are buzzing around, and it's just a beautiful day. And he called me, and everything just thawed. And we had this wonderful conversation. And I thought after it, I found a YouTube video with Judy Collins singing, "In My Life, I Love You More." And I sent it to him. And his last words to me was, in an email, said, "Thank you for that." And then we couldn't get him on the phone or anything. And Martha, my second daughter, and the sheriff went out. And he was on the couch, dead. Golf Channel on. So I know he died happy. Because he was a golf maniac. And yeah, so there I was. And I was massively depressed, both from, and then the shutdown, and just didn't know what to do. But, time gives you some perspective, and the anchor in all this was our faith. It just becomes such a part of you that it's impossible to even think of how it would be possible. I cannot think how it would be possible, to live without the support and the friends and the mysteries of our faith. So I don't have any particular wisdom to share with you today. I wish I did. I think a lot of life is just enduring. And it's really only been the last few years that I've been able to enjoy life at all. He's gone three years, and I moved into a senior community after 1 year, and I hid in my apartment for 1 year, and with my little dog, and people knew me because I walked my little dog, and she's a very distinctive little dog. And then I was dead inside. I couldn't enjoy anything. I was so depressed, I didn't even know I was depressed, and it just gradually started to come out of that. And then all of a sudden, one day it's like I'm remembering people's names, and I'm doing stuff, and going to this wonderful Catholic church in Austin, St. Louis, Catholic, but still missing Episcopalians. Terribly, it's a very different culture. And I am just naturally an Episcopalian. So what's the point of my story? I don't know. You got me. I kept trying to think of words of wisdom to say or something like that. I can't think of a darn thing. Except that it's this. It's this. It's, as you can tell, I have quite a lot of trouble with balance and walking, especially when I'm tired, which I am. And that's from neuropathy from the chemotherapy. And so my legs feel like they're just made of lead. They just don't. I say do that, and they don't do that. So I shuffle along with my stick. Some days I do much, much better than other days. Some days it's almost normal. Go figure. But, it's just a life. It's a life. Every life is a book. Every life is a novel. Every life has choices to make. And I made some unwise ones. But if we just hold on to that. Oh, there was an old song. Let's see. If I had a golden cord of something so fine, in it I would wave a magic thread of crystal design. And I don't know, it's just like I wake up some mornings and I feel like I'm 16, but without adolescent angst. And other days I wake up and think, I don't even know if I can get out of bed. But in many ways, this is kind of the best part of my whole life, I miss the babies, but I have grandbabies. I have great grandbabies. I have 4 of the most magnificent sons-in-law in the world. And so many of my friends' kids married total idiots that I just wake up every day and you know, I have 3 new greats born within about 6 months of each other. And it's just, you know, it is just unbelievably, unimaginably gratifying. And to reconnect with Janet and Helen, I can't tell you what that means to me. And to be here among you. So thank you for listening to my life story. Every life is a novel. So mine was, you know, it was, some of it was science fiction, I think. I'm pretty sure about that. So anyway, there it is. As they say, there it is. So. Thank you so much.